this Fextralife video, we're going to be talking about Fate of the Old Republic. This is another game that was announced at the Game Awards just a few hours ago, and this is a big one in my opinion. That and Divinity are the two standouts for me at the game show, and these are the two games that I want to make videos about besides the SWTOR video I made earlier. And I want to talk a little bit about what we know about this game and why I think there's a reason to be excited about it, even though I know there haven't been the greatest Star Wars games recently. So first of all, obviously, the name of it, Fate of the Old Republic, this is going to be set in the Old Republic era of the Star Wars universe, which is where Knights of the Old Republic took place and Knights of the Old Republic took place. These are two of my all-time favorite RPGs. I have not been shy about this. The first one is arguably my favorite RPG of all time, maybe dethroned slightly by Elden Ring, but it's absolutely one of the best experiences I've ever had in gaming, combining Dungeons and Dragons with the Star Wars universe into like a fantastic experience. It's just been one of the highlights of games in my lifetime. So I'm very, very excited to finally see another game in that universe. We don't know if this is going to be a sequel or a prequel or just a game set in that universe. I suspect highly that it will just be a game set in that universe, since it's been so long since the previous games have happened, and there's no reason not to just create a brand new story for people to enjoy, especially if they haven't played the old games. And probably the thing that has me most excited about Fate of the Old Republic is that Casey Hudson is directing the game. He was one of the original directors on Knights of the Old Republic and on the Mass Effect trilogy. So he knows how to make great RPGs. Those games are some of the best RPGs of all time. He left BioWare a while ago, so he hasn't been at BioWare in some time, which is fantastic because, as we know, BioWare isn't doing anything great these days, and probably him leaving is probably a big reason why that is the case. But he will be directing this game with his game studio, Arcanaut Studios, which is a brand new studio that came to being in July of this year, so it's relatively new. It's located in Canada, so this is a Canada game development studio. And the fact that he's just helming this project already is a good sign. We've seen some really disasters of Star Wars out there, not just in gaming, but in film and media. And I think those were often developed by people who didn't have a love for or understanding for the universe the way that Casey Hudson does. So I'm very looking forward to, seeing what he can produce here. Now, obviously, there wasn't a lot shown in the trailer. There wasn't any gameplay, but you can see two companions escorting the main character, who's clearly a Jedi. And that is obviously reminiscent of the Knights of the Old Republic games and the Mass Effect games, where you have two companions you can bring with you. So I think it's very obvious that that is going to be a part of the game. Jeff Keighley did say that this is going to be an action role-playing title. So that makes me curious how the combat in this game will be. I think it's very, very unlikely that we will have combat that is similar to Knights of the Old Republic, simply because it was a mixture of D&D and, other mechanics in the game. And and except for the resurgence of Baldur's Gate 3 recently and SWTOR, D&D historically hasn't been something that's been very, very popular in gaming. There have been some good D&D games over the years, but generally speaking, it's not something that's usually pretty mainstream these days. With the exception of those two games I just mentioned, you don't see a lot of D&D. So I think it's likely the combat will be more of an action format, and since, Mass Effect kind of had a third-person perspective with, ranged combat, I think it wouldn't be strange to see something similar in this game. Obviously, you'll have some melee combat with the addition of, like, say, lightsabers and, melee weapons as well, probably. But I think you're going to see a more, traditional action RPG format for the combat of the game, but we will still have to see. We also know that they're going to be collaborating with Lucasfilms on this story, so hopefully that means we'll see some canon characters from, maybe previous Knights of the Old Republic games, or maybe just from the Star Wars universe itself. So that could be really cool. And we also know that it's going to be released on PC and consoles. There's no release date yet. The fact that this studio was just put together in July and that we don't see any gameplay here leads me to believe that this is in the very early stages of development. And even if you go on to Arcanaut Studios, you can actually apply for jobs at the studios to work on this project. So I think it's going to be a while before we see any more of it. I don't think we're going to see gameplay, at GDC or see it at Gamescom this year. I think it's probably going to be maybe the Game Awards next year or later before we actually see gameplay on this project, because I think it's a ways out. We're probably talking like a 2027, 2028 release. I would be shocked if it even came in 2027. So that's what we know so far. Really excited for this. Really excited that Casey Hudson is directing this project. I want to know what you guys think, though. Are you happy to have more Knights of the Old Republic? Are you wondering what's happening with the Knights of the Old Republic remake? Does this make you not care so much about what's happening with the Knights of the Old Republic remake? Let me know in the comments below.